So welcome to this retreat at Sokukoji-Traverse City, hosted by Kozan. Thank you, Kozan. Thanks to everybody who's helped with this. Bring this together to make this happen. So this morning we're talking, the topic is something not very particularly esoteric, but something we all deal with all the time. Working with negativity, how to skillfully, sanely work with negativity without getting sucked into the negativity where we end up being at war with things ourselves, to put it simply. And I'm happy to address that from a different direction if you have some variations on that, call it a theme, I guess. So first of all, I would like to say that if you have not intensely, sincerely worked with the negativity deep in your own heart, you're going to have trouble working with it when it shows up out here. Because we are not separate. We are fundamentally not separate. I've said that probably 20 times. 2,000 times. We're not separate. So sometimes that no separation shows up in terms of that kind of resonance. Anger comes up and we get angry. Love and celebration and joy and happiness comes up and we get joyful. Very interesting area to work with. We feel so secure in our little framework of me, me, me. And yet we can be triggered because there seems to be little pockets of buried stuff. Sometimes in psychology, those are called ego states. And they've not been explored. They're just things have happened, you've had some difficulty, and you cover it up. Well, that works. I can just kind of sit on that. Meditation is about going in and exploring everything, going deep down in. It's not about smoothing over the top of things and covering things up. I mean, that will work. You can do a kind of meditation that softens everything up, that makes you feel more calm, that brings more balance. But if everything is going fine in your life, pretty much, then that kind of thing works. But if things are getting really difficult or stressful, or if things are coming apart or falling apart, or the things you counted on are tipping over, and those ones you love are getting ill or passing away, it's just really, really hard. It's very challenging to, kind of just be with it. You just, let it be, as we sometimes hear. Don't hang on. So what I want to suggest to you, since you're here, you're giving me permission to tell you, and you show up in this room, even though you haven't asked me, you're basically giving me permission. And what I would like to say is train your mind so that you can actually see fundamentally into the very negativity that you need to work with. And that can show up in so many different ways. It show up in terms of, the three poisons: passion, aggression, and ignorance, which is taught in Buddhism, or all the variations on that. We go into jealousy and greediness, and so many different ways that we avoid seeing our mutuality, that we're all in this together. So when we do shikantaza, this particular kind of practice, it's probably the most simple and direct practice that you can do. And it's very difficult to do it because you don't really you're not counting your breath, you're not following your breath, you're not labeling thinking, you're not doing a mantra, you're just kind of hanging out, except you're holding very still. To hold very still, since body and mind are not really as separate as they look, when you hold your body very still, have all of your senses open, in particular the eyes, and just observe what continues to move. If you see it through, focus on the contrast part rather than on the story about it. When something gets very, very difficult, it's just contrast. As soon as you peel off into a description or you start doing becoming a cub reporter, on your own mind and who you are and what you're doing and what should happen and what shouldn't happen and why this is happening, who caused this and why did this, you know what I'm saying? It's just, sometimes it's just, circular. Why? Because. You don't have to do that. You can actually look at it and see directly what is the truth. That takes a while. Sometimes, probably, takes a lifetime. Not that you can't make a lot of headway in a retreat. You have to do a lot of retreats. This is not for everyone to do. I don't give sales pitches. On the other hand, like I said, if you're here, then I am really excited about talking to you about this because I know how important this is from being at war with myself, the first part of my life and most of my life, actually. Not liking this, not liking this, judging this, wishing I was different, wishing someone else is different. Relationships have been extremely confusing to me until I met Unyo. I know everything's perfect. Damn close to it. So what I would encourage you to do is to use the meditation practice, the sitting practice of meditation, of holding still and watching what moves. If you do enough of that, when you get up off of the cushion, what do you tend to do? You tend to watch what moves rather than going into the personality of who's saying what and who's right, who's wrong. Am I right? Am I wrong? How do I look? What do they think about what I'm thinking about what they're thinking? What are they thinking about what I'm thinking about what they're thinking I'm thinking? And I use this over and over again because it sounds silly. We do this all the time. We think about, we might not change what we're doing, but quite often we're thinking about what somebody's thinking about what we're thinking. As if, like I said earlier, we don't even know what we're thinking ourselves. In terms of really deeply understanding what it's about. So the sitting practice of meditation, shikantaza, as I teach it, is hold very still and just observe. It's like clouds in the sky, fish in a pond. The other image I like to use is the river flowing by. You're watching a lot of movement and leaves fall out of the tree and fall into the river. A little bit on the romantic side, but mind is like that. Mind is just things fall and they're never the same. It's always a river, they're always leaves, but there's never the same pattern. They're always changing. So just a low level of entertainment happening there. Not much. But if you watch it, just watch what arises, the sense fields and the six sense fields, including the mind. What goes this way, goes that way, sound of the rain, sound of a cardinal outside, sound of someone moving dishes in the kitchen. The way I teach this is not because I don't know of other ways. I know of lots of other ways of actually trying to control the mind and make it do a certain thing. I feel, you could say this is an opinion, say whatever you want, but I feel that to try to struggle with or correct or change or modify or reform something based on your preconceptions. This is the preconception. You're looking at your idea of something rather than what's there. If you're looking at what is actually in front of you, you won't know what it is. And this is terrifying to ego. Self-centeredness or ego wants reinforcing, wants to know I'm here, I'm valid, I see this, I understand, I'm in the whole world, the whole mundane path, all of the different mundane paths are about what? Being correct, being right, even being enlightened. And this path is about the truth, no matter how that shows up. It's about seeing what is fundamentally true. And for some reason, even though it's universal, it seems extremely personal. Questions at this point? Yes, sir.
So with awareness practice, I can see certain states arising, like aggression. But out and off the cushion, I don't have time to sit and see what happens with that. So you're saying don't use any strategies. My inclination would be to count the breath or get rid of that feeling so I can go engage and be helpful. What would you suggest if I'm out there in the world and I see this aggressive state arising? How should I deal with that negativity?
I'd start by saying don't talk by moving your hands. I'm just teasing you.
Yes, sir.
Sit more. We've already discussed it. You can't, if you don't have a sharp knife, you aren't going to be able to cut much. So spend some time, get the knife away from the vegetables. Like sit down on the cushion, strengthen, sharpen that blade so that when you get up off the cushion, you go back out into your everyday life, you're operating with really, really well-oiled, well-sharpened equipment. Your prajna, or your wisdom nature, your insight is very powerful and goes right through not only your own preconceptions to see the truth, but through other people's preconceptions. You actually can see the way, which I've talked about before. You begin to see the why people are acting the way they're acting, because you see more deeply into what's happening with them, and you see they're trying to get out of their own negativity by going to war with you or blaming you or making things difficult for you in so many different ways. So to you specifically, this may not make as much sense to others because I'm talking to you. Sit a lot more, schedule it. And then the other couple of other things we talked about. You should knock that off. Yes.
Well, this is the difficulty is it's not really a conceptual thing. I just feel this heat, and then the moment awareness recedes, that heat is projected out.
Yeah.
And I just want to do something with that. And it seems like just sitting more, I have to wait a really long time, a lifetime until.
Too bad. Sit more. It's not a instant fix. You can't. There isn't anything to fix. There's nothing is broken. It's a misunderstanding to think something is wrong here and you need to fix it. This is a mundane path, and I'm not saying that's wrong. Some people aren't ready to do a spiritual path, a transcendent path. Some people just want to have a healthy ego, and they should have it. They should go to whomever, psychiatrist, therapist, or whatever. But quite often, if there's any kind of stress or struggle there, that person who is highly educated, highly trained, they want to medicate it because they don't want to just actually work with what's there. It's because it's frustrating to not understand why somebody is completely depressed and wants to take their life. You can't find any reason. You can't find any reason because it's a mundane path.
So even if like counting the breath, I can get calm now, and now I can go engage in the world and be more tranquil. You're saying don't do that.
I'm saying, you know how I teach. So I'm saying do a lot of it. When I say that, do an hour to 2 hours a day. That's not. And if you need more than that, come down south to the monastery, and there's scheduled 6.5 hours of sitting meditation every day, as you know. So if you live there, you have to do that. It's a requirement. More awareness will show up in your everyday structure there, and the other things we talked about too. No more popsicles. Other questions before I continue? Yes, goes on.
How does the practice of sitting meditation help us work with negativity off of the cushion?
So what it does is by doing enough sitting practice and doing it in this way, I'm not saying I'm not making anyone wrong. I'm not saying we're right, they're wrong. I'm saying this is the way it looks to me from doing this for 40 plus years. We begin to see the negativity in ourselves, and we begin to see the way we project. We begin to see that whole dynamic. Not fixing it. If you start to fix something you don't understand, you might as well be putting a blindfold on. You have to wait. It's called patience. You have to wait, keep looking. And then anything that comes up like, well, I can't see very well, don't buy that. Don't buy that. Just keep looking. Make the practice very simple. Just observe. You have to have a direct perception. You can't have more concepts. We're already, the thinking process, the analytical process, I like to say, is already muscle bound. And we have to find a way to get the awareness out in front of the thinking process, because if you're living your whole life through thoughts, judging, evaluating, then you're saying that you're on the spiritual path, but you're using mundane tools. Not that we should ignore them, of course. We need to work in that area also. But getting that awareness so that you lead with your awareness, so that when you go down the stairs and you go into a room full of people, you have no idea what you're going to do. If you know what you're going to do ahead of time, and you should ask questions about this. If you know what you're going to do ahead of time, I'm not saying we shouldn't plan, of course. Can't have a retreat unless you plan. You have to plan to go and see the doctor or see the chiropractor. You have to do different things. But what we try to do is we try to make that a way of living our life. And so sitting on the cushion strengthens the awareness so that you begin to have the courage to actually live your life in the open dimension of awareness, so that you're just about being. It's called authentic presence. You're completely present all the time with no supports. It's egolessness. And you can do that. You'll get glimpses of it. Once you decide that's what you want to do, you'll start to get glimpses of it. It won't fuel you. It isn't where you suddenly get some kind of muscles there. So get the awareness out in front. So there's a willingness to not know, a willingness to just not to, so that whatever arises in the situation, that space, that's how you work with your life. Then you go here, go there, you meet this person where they're at, you back away from this person, not based on preconceptions and ideas and previous judgments. Can you hear me okay, Terry?
Beautiful.
Good. So not based on preconceptions about that ahead of time, like a protocol for how to work with this or how to work with that. More?
Yeah. So maybe as a byproduct of meditation, I feel that things that would have gone from 0 to 10 maybe are just sitting here, but feeling the heat and the hostility.
Yeah. I'm waiting for her. I'm looking at you, but I'm listening to her.
So if there's a mood or there's a situation where it feels like there's a mood of negativity and there's some sense of, it's not all that I'm trying to blame out there. There's a common denominator. I'm just pissed at everything.
What's the question?
How can you work with that when you realize there's something going on here that's making this color gray?
Mm-hmm.
How do you not engage and go out and punch when you already see that it's something to look at?
How are you doing it now?
Sitting.
So sometimes there's a misunderstanding when we're dealing with negativity, which we've already started to open up to stop fighting with, to stop fighting down deep. We've started to open up, but the warfare, both the fists are not happening anymore, but one of the fists is still running, and it is triggered by events out here, and it triggers.
Sorry, something's burning here. Yeah, I smell it too. It's the light's burning.
Is it the light? Just
They're notorious for catching fire.
Yeah.
I think moth wants to fly in there.
It's a
Just let
mothball.
it cool down and turn on. Are we okay with the mood lighting?
Yes.
Get a lamp.
Absolutely.
Whew.
This is mood lighting.
It's like burning balls.
Yeah, we could light some incense.
The heat was just rising.
Yeah, you caused that.
That was a moth's offering.
The moth's offering, yeah. Here, I'll show them. So, so going back to the fist image, someone with no training at all is dealing with this. They're trying to cover up this warfare by blaming, either blaming yourself or blaming someone else or explaining. It's called passion. Passion, aggression, and ignorance. Those are the three ways we avoid reality. And what is reality? Everything is dependently arisen. This is what the Buddha's discovery when he rose from his seat
Could you repeat that? Everything
is dependently arisen. This depends upon that, depends upon that. This depends upon everything else for its apparent singularity. There is no solid, separate beings anywhere. Yes, there's separated physical forms, bodies, of course. There are separations everywhere. But the fundamental insight that you, if you're sitting in this room anyway, need to understand is that who you are is not separate from anything anywhere. And it's not particularly a wonderful, glorious feeling of aha, which is what we quite often look for. And when we get it, we try to cling to it because those things come and go too. But it's just more stuff. The actual realization of it isn't anything. It's not a thought pattern. It's not even an experience. If it's an experience, here's an experience. Not very loud. Okay. Where is it now? It's gone. All experience, no matter how drawn out it is, will vanish. Realization does not vanish. It's not an experience. It's an awakening. You wake up and you never go back to sleep. But you awaken with your karma, with your causes and conditions, with all the lifetimes that you've been on this planet or other planets. You awaken with that. You don't forget everything that's ever happened to you. And you don't necessarily remember everything that's happened to you. More.
If in the practice you feel negativity, you're experiencing that, you see to some extent that it's not separate, or that's your conditioning. If you really see it, is it possible to cause harm?
So the whole idea of causes and conditions, of someone causing harm, we're causing harm right now. From the ultimate point of view, there isn't anything that isn't the cause of everything else. So what you're referring to is the teaching of do no harm. And that just means, insofar as you can, mind your own business. Don't interfere with other people's situation, either in the extreme way by like stealing from them or hurting them, and the other more subtle ways like giving them advice they didn't give you permission to give them. That's very subtle, but it's not particularly helpful. It causes someone to continue to spin. The way that you can help someone stop spinning is, first of all, stop spinning yourself, and also don't interfere with someone else's situation based on your preconceptions. More? Good question.
I guess maybe a little
Yes.
different. If they're working with negativity and there's a situation, I'll give an example of Marty. And I'm in
Your former
my
mate.
Yes, and I'm in this situation with him, and he's got me over a barrel with his
Yeah.
property, and it really relatively isn't right.
Yeah.
But that story keeps coming up and up
Yeah.
and up. So
What are you doing with it?
just looking at that, feeling it.
Sounds fine. What's your question?
If he's not right in front of me and I'm not talking to him, but the mind keeps going back and back and back. Over the
Recreating
story.
Marty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that imaginary Marty, I'm ready to pop him one.
Yeah.
How do you work with that when you're in your head about it instead of in the actual situation?
So this is, okay, we'll go back to the image. Here's the untrained mind is like this. Usually you can hide out from it. You can ignore that until something comes along to upset you, make you mad, or trigger this unseen or unexplored negativity. And then it thinks that, it's like a call from off stage, it thinks it's time to come on and go into action because it's been unexpressed. So we sometimes get overreactive to something because something's been triggered. And so a little bit of that is going on, but also since you're training your mind, you have some realization that you're taking responsibility, you could say, for some of that generating stuff. That stuff is coming out of your particular consciousness matrix. The technical term would be the Alaya Vijnana, or the store consciousness. So but it's more like just one fist. So you've actually, the awareness has come in and has stopped that kind of warfare, but there's still something looking for a fight. At the same time, there's a commentary on it. Oh, this is unreal. I'm making this up. I'm inventing Marty. Marty could have died 3 days ago. Might not even be any more Marty, and yet you're reinventing this and fighting. You already know this. And so where you are, to say, use a relative term, you're halfway up the mountain. You've been working on your mind for quite a number of years. You've been meditating a lot. You're a monk, so you're very dedicated. You spent, many weeks in solitary retreat by yourself, looking at your mind, and it shows up. It shows that you're able to work with the situation and understand your negativity, but it's still the path. You're still on the path. It's like you're partway up the mountain and you're upset with the branches and twigs and sinkholes. You're getting upset. And all I'm saying is keep going. This is how it looks. And the mundane path will try to repair that, thinks that negativity is wrong. You shouldn't be feeling that. You need to stop that. This is a very, very presumptuous idea about the nature of reality, and the nature of sentient beings, the nature of the world. The nature of the world in its fundamental nature is not separate. It's completely pure, completely sacred, and you can't meddle with it. Go ahead.
So to carry that example, the Marty thing, or anyone, I notice that sometimes if I'm tweaked at someone, it'll be like this.
Yes.
And I see like, this is overblown, but I can't help it. It just keeps going. And then when I actually see them, a lot of times it's like, what was that all about? Because it drops. But then sometimes it's like, it drops, but then the courage to actually meet that person and say what you need to say. Like you told me with Marty, don't settle.
Mm-hmm.
So is it possible to work with a middle way in between of passivity and then you're angry because you didn't say what you needed to say?
Passivity is a misunderstanding. You're misunderstanding what's happening. Sit. Keep sitting. Don't make assumptions about how that should turn out. You can't see the causes and conditions that are innumerable. It's just billions, zillions. Even that is an understatement of all the things that led up to that connection with Marty. His past, your past came together. You came together. You had this kind of operation, this kind of interaction over a period of a few years, and then it all came apart. And different things are still moving around in your anger, your resentment, whatever you want to call it. Those things are getting triggered. I would say, insofar as you're able, do nothing. Hold still. Everything changes. Nothing will last. But it will be prolonged if you fiddle with it, because then it's almost like it thinks it's something, and it's important, and it needs to keep going. Yes.
Is that what you're calling passivity?
What?
Just not doing anything with it?
Well, I think that
passivity is a misunderstanding.
It's a misunderstanding. Yeah.
How so?
Because my understanding of what she's saying is that you might feel you're being too passive about it. Is that it or not?
Yeah, like maybe the Marty thing is an exacerbated situation, but anyone, maybe there's something that you need to be direct with them, but then is it that you're afraid to say what you need to say?
Less is better, especially in the way in which this might be a little, everyone here asked me this question, was sitting in front of me, asked me, I would respond, dependent. It's dependently arisen. Dependent on who's sitting in front of me and what they're dealing with. I don't have canned answers for anything. I never plan a talk. I mean, I occasionally will have some note cards, which I usually ignore. I can't talk about that. Not time. So this very talk is arising out of that's why I'm looking at everyone, because it's arising out of what I see. And no, I'm not mind reading. I just, I don't know what it is, but it rises out of who's here. Just like you're presenting how you're working with this, and I'm saying to you, don't do anything. Do nothing with it. Wait. Yes. Terry.
I heard you describe what I understood you to mean.
Yes.
By peaceful or mindful life.
Yes.
As a mundane life. And
Could
I
be.
heard you use the word mundane in a different light.
Okay.
Could you clarify that?
So let me just contrast mundane and supramundane or spiritual path. The mundane path is thinking that this world is real, which seems pretty real. This doesn't mean that you can, you can eat cement blocks. I mean, cement is cement. You can't do that. So there's certain laws and regulations and so on that have to be respected. But that's not the whole story. But instead we get caught up in that, and success and failure, we see it everywhere. You turn on the news and it's just intense. Three poisons going on of people warring with each other and fighting and disagreeing, as if there's some kind of solid right and wrong situation going on. But the spiritual path is one where we're trying to see the fundamental reality, trying to see who we are fundamentally. We're trying to see, is there a spiritual dimension? Yes, there is. But it's not something that functions in the same way, that the relative cause and effect and proof. This is why science only goes so far. As soon as it runs into anything it doesn't understand, it either medicates it or it projects some kind of idea on it that'll stop anybody from investigating it. Even if you have a bunch of degrees, if you're in a university, you start to try to study something that people like aliens. Pretty difficult to get funding for that, but it should be studied because they're everywhere, and that's not something to be believed. You don't have to believe or disbelieve anything. And so, is that helpful, or is there further questions on that?
It is. But the word mundane itself, the incense does affect.
It's all burnout now.
So mundane can be interpreted to mean ubiquitously not so meaningful.
Well, I didn't say it wasn't meaningful. I'm just saying it's more about cause and effect.
Right.
Feeling better, feeling sad.
Or from a more spiritual angle, seeing mundane as it doesn't need to be spectacular. It doesn't need to fit in with common culture's ideas.
Okay.
So is that how you would use the word mundane to represent those two different concepts?
So simply put, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand you real clearly, so I'm hesitant to agree. But I would say this: mundane is just very pragmatic, practical, cause and effect situations that we get because it is so powerful. We actually believe that we're just, that when you die, you're done for, you're gone, or else we might have some kind of magical thinking about the whole thing based on culture or on our training. But the mundane path is like you work hard, you get a good job, anybody can be president, those kinds of things. So, there's so much hype out there. There's so much just completely crazy opinions that are generated so that those who want to control us are able to do that. And so I would say the best approach to take to anything mundane or supramundane is don't believe anything. And after I say that, I immediately say, and don't disbelieve anything. Give everything the benefit of the doubt. Allow everything to be, anytime you settle on anything, you lock down and all the rest of the possibilities start to die out. Is that helpful?
Yes, very.
Okay.
I'm connecting with the idea of attachment, that you can aim towards a life of
Yes.
of what's real and what is not, and not be attached. Am I getting your gist? I'm still searching for your meaning.
You might have trouble finding that. If I don't know what I'm thinking, then how are you going to know? I don't think in a linear way. I don't even think outside of this room. And I don't mean that as like bragging rights or anything. I'm just saying it just doesn't function that way anymore. On the other hand, I'm very committed to helping you where you're at if I can, if I have your permission. And so I'm trying to tune into where you are. Do you know where you are?
Yes.
Good. And I've just helped you. Yes, sir.
Is that abusing the Dharma then?
It can be. Yeah. And those all those abusing the Dharma, abusing the Buddha, abusing the Sangha are just ways of trying to help us with our discursive thought, of trying to latch onto opinions. An opinion is just something that's an artificial thing that's stable, helps to give the illusion of stability to the ego or the self-centeredness. Or in Buddhism, we call it the seventh consciousness, that part of the consciousness that thinks there is somebody that needs protecting or advancing. And this is just a complete myth. It's not that we shouldn't, run away from a lion. So we're not going to stand there because we have no ego. So it's a very pragmatic kind of practical kind of understanding that can move easily from the very pragmatic or practical situation into any kind of ultimate situation with ease. And if there's a solid being somewhere, it's not going to be easy that you believe in. Yes.
There's so much information out there now about how we are, with our amygdala, wired for negativity.
Is that little thing that looks like a squirrel in the center
There's
of your
two of them, one in the back.
brain? Two squirrels.
Yeah, two little squirrels. Yeah, they're actually reptiles. I think it's reptilian, but
Turtles.
there's so much. Yeah, turtles.
All the way down.
Turtles are good. I just wonder about your thoughts of that. I mean, it's a.
So ask me a question. I don't give thought. I've all kinds of
What
thoughts.
do you think about this notion that we are inherently wired for negativity, for survival?
I think it's a complete misunderstanding. And it's a speculative understanding based on scientific materialism that wants to squeeze results out of samsara, or the wheel of life and death. And it's it might happen one of these centuries. It didn't happen in Atlantis. It blew that all apart. Yes.
In talking to Kozan, you use the analogy that she's going up a mountain in working with her negativity and then telling him to keep sitting.
We're all going up mountains. That's
Right.
just a way of talking about the path.
Yep.
Don't say right. Don't agree that quick.
So not my children, but generally speaking, children
Yes. Children.
have negativity.
Yes.
Would you tell them to sit and not have a way to work with their negativity in the moment?
Is it a question?
Yes,
Is there a period at the end of that or a question mark?
both.
These darn communication people.
Imperfect.
I can respond to that. Thank you. It's a good question. Do not tell your children to sit. Tell them to go to school, because that's a school. They need to go to school, of course. But stay away from a practice of meditation. Do it by example. You sit. If they come and they say, "What are you doing?" You say, "I'm meditating." Say, "Can I meditate?" "Sure, have a seat." If they get up and leave and don't come back for 3 years, no comment. Stay out. Don't meddle. The kind of mindfulness practice that I've been saying lately, because I think it's really funny. You probably won't laugh, but I'll say it anyway. Is mind your own business, and that means you should stay out of they're developing. They're starting to understand. They're actually looking at you. They're incredibly young. Little people are incredibly intelligent. They aren't covered over. They aren't covered over by concepts. They aren't covered over by a bunch of beliefs, and they aren't protecting themselves from the world's unpredictability with a bunch of ideas. That's why they're so cute. That's why they're so wonderful to listen to, and because they're just totally direct about how they feel, what they want, what they don't want. They're amazing. Some people say that they're enlightened, and then we lose our enlightenment.
That's my question. So it wasn't really about how do you deal with them. They're already on top of the mountain. So
I didn't say that. You said it.
right.
They're not on top of the mountain.
Not right.
They're way at the bottom of the mountain. They're children. They're actually down in the valley where people are born. They're not on top of the mountain. They're not wise. They're innocent. Now you can talk. So when children meditate, it's wonderful. You watch them meditate, and then they stop. And then they might come back and and they might say, how do I do this? And you would tell them, just respond to their questions. Don't load them up with a bunch of concepts based on your misunderstandings.
So it's more the negativity, not the meditation.
Okay, what's the direct question?
When children have negativity.
Your child.
No, in general, like they express the negativity.
I'm listening. What's the question?
How would you guide children with negativity? He was asking a direct question, like, when I feel this heat, how do I, in my daily life, deal with it? And you said, sit more.
That's what I said to him. Yeah.
So as people who are leading by example,
Yeah. I'm following everything you're saying. I want to know your question.
how do we instruct the next generation to deal with that negativity without saying sit more?
You sit more. You practice. You become sane. If you're sane, then anyone that's crazy that's around you, you're going to understand what they're dealing with, and you will mind your own business. You'll keep your hands out of their negativity, and you'll only come in if you're invited. If you don't help anyone unless you're invited, and you have to make sure that you really have permission from them.
But in a job where you're working with, I'm working with 150 young
Gotcha.
adults.
Okay.
So like you're saying, they kind of give me permission when
They
when
do.
they walk in the room.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be giving them that advice or
Okay.
whatever he's
Okay,
directly
so
asking.
you're giving me a specific example, and I'll try to address that, but it's just a specific example. What's the question? And I'll be very direct with your advice, with the response.
How do you help people work with their negativity?
Yeah. Relate to them where they're at in the negativity. Don't be separate from the negativity and try to correct it or lecture them or tell them stuff, or they shouldn't do that, or the reason you're doing this is because of this and this and this. And if the negativity is really powerful, you might not be able to do much. We can't really help everyone, but you can be there with them. You can look them in the eye. When they turn their head this way, you can turn your head this way. Communicate. Communication is not just words. Communication is an open dimension of being where there is no solid self anywhere. You need to find that. When I say you need to find that, you do whatever you want. Well, really not anymore because you asked for Jukai. So now you're stuck with me. It's very difficult, but the sincerity that you bring to it is what's important. That you're sincere. This means that anything, as you practice meditation, as you continue to train your mind, that will start because we are not separate. We start to resonate with other people. Just being having caring and consideration for yourself leaks out into everything. You don't have to just go out and help people. That kind of helping people is more mundane path. A lot of times people who do that just want to be known as somebody who's very helpful. And we'll even hear people talking. I just think about other people. I just never think about myself. I'm always doing things for other people. Probably not. Probably very, very, very self-centered. It's just disguised as helping others. Not wrong. There's still help there. I'm not saying that those are wrong. But when you're standing in front of your class, look at them. Watch them. Watch their body language. Don't interpret the body language. That's more intellect. That's going back into your head and looking at your preconceptions rather than what's in front of you. Look and don't add. Don't do any math at all. You do no math if you don't add, don't subtract. In other words, don't explain anything. Don't subtract or try to get rid of something or be aggressive, and don't look away or distract yourself or divide yourself away from it. Just be present. Look at the colors of people's clothes. Just be there. Look at the amazing power of gravity that's holding everybody down in your classroom so you can even talk to them. It's an astonishing realization to just be present moment by moment. There's nothing but moments. There's only this moment. There's not another moment. There's not a past moment. There's just this moment. Everything is happening now.
So,
And that you might have to go up a big mountain to get to that.
So in the name of the talk dealing with negativity,
which is what we're doing.
how do you deal with negativity?
Stop fighting with it. Stop trying to do away with it based on your preconceptions about what it is, where it came from, who's causing it. Don't blame. And if you find yourself spontaneously blaming, pull the finger back. Don't blame. There's no, you can't find first cause anywhere. You can't find something, someone who originally caused that. The world, the mundane path world does that because it wants to have control. So therefore, if a 16-year-old boy in Detroit robs a store, instead of looking at the overall situation, they throw him in jail or shoot him. You know, they just deal with it as cause and effect. They blame him, put him in jail as they call it the Michigan Department of Corrections, which corrects nothing. It just punishes. It just puts people in a box, locks it up, and shoves bad food into it. It's terrible. But we can't. The only thing we can really do about that, fundamentally, I mean, we could get picket signs and start, become an attorney and go and work with it that way. But the very best thing you can do, I have no doubt about this, and I have a lot of doubts. Sorry, I lied. I don't have any doubts. Train your mind. You become sane. And then everywhere you go, everything you touch, everyone you talk to starts to feel that they might not necessarily give you credit, but they'll notice that you don't fight. That even your difficulty and everything is not personal. All you have to do is radiate. You don't have to give any information at all. That's not a compliment. All you have to do is stand in front and be who you are, and talk to them, and use the dynamics of your class, whatever the syllabus is. You use that. But when people come to you with issues or problems, you see negativity arising, don't fix them. Respect them. They've been around for millions of years, as you have. We've all been here forever, and we're going to be here for a lot longer, the way it's looking. Not on this earth necessarily. This earth is going down, the way it's looking. So all you have to do is just be present, genuine presence.
So when someone takes the chair and throws the chair on the ground and they're negative right there in the middle, and I mean, it is the reality of the situation.
How old are they?
Any age.
Well, give me
17.
Yeah.
4, 17.
Well, give me an actual concrete
My
example.
7-year-old does it, and I've
Yeah.
had a student in college do it.
Okay.
So
What are you doing at this point? What do you do? Yell at them, or get mad, or spank them, or what do you do? Can't spank them in college, or maybe you can. I don't know.
they might think that.
So what do you? It's not. I'm not here to tell you don't get mad, or don't yell, or don't. We're not talking about that. We're talking about being present, and that may involve knocking their block off. It may. But it's so important to be genuine and not to show up as someone who's genuine, not to look like someone who's. Look how genuine I'm being. Look how, But it's important to just be with whatever's happening, not separate yourself from the negativity. Those who separate themselves from the negativity go to war with it because it looks like somebody else. But if you don't separate yourself from the negativity, it's called compassion. Feeling with, not feeling for. Feeling actually being running the risk of being nuts yourself.
The 18-year-old I can see being, just genuinely there. But is there some responsibility to the 7-year-old who tipped the chair over to teach, like, oh, we don't tip chairs over. Here's how to calm down, find a breath, count to 10.
You've been doing that?
That's interference.
Not necessarily. I mean, to go in with some kind of a suggestion about, well, you need to do this or this or this, I can't really do that. I'm saying that if you're training your mind to just be present at whatever's arising, then what you need to do with that situation is probably going to be pretty creative. It's not going to be based on some protocol I'll give you or something. I wouldn't do that anyway. I mean, I might, if I heard a specific situation with someone that I knew really well, you know, if I knew your children, I was there, I saw it, I might function in a, I don't know how I would function, but I wouldn't be necessarily passive.
Right, because he's asking you for a direct idea how to deal with that, but then he has 20 kids who he's seen.
He's a different.
engage.
I'm talking to you. I meet people exactly where they're at, and of course, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm missing the point. But that's what I endeavor to do. And so I'm saying, in your situation, in his situation, he knows why it's different, don't you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. No, I think I think you're probably doing fine. Just, you know, at the risk of sounding a little corny or a little romantic, you know, you can just love your child. You know, just feel sad that he has such intense feelings he has to throw chairs around. Get him a rubber chair. I mean, I slipped. I wasn't going to tell you what to do, and then I get him a rubber chair. Did he break the chair?
It's an example.
Oh, then I want something to actually happen. I was going to have you draw little faces on the chair. You already know. All you have to do is be genuine and not be worried about right and wrong. This is a trap. Am I doing this right? Is this good parenting? It's a trap because we jump out of the reality, the intense emotional dynamic that is happening called nerve endings. And we go into some kind of concept about it and try to come back and think that some kind of truth is going to come back to that situation. The truth, you just abandon the truth. The truth is heartbreaking. It's a samsara, the endless wheel of life and death is the very first words out of the Buddha's mouth when he attained awakening, as far as we know, is life is suffering. He didn't say part-time. And if you have questions about that, I would be happy to address them. We're always suffering. There's always discontent, dissatisfaction going on some kind of a level. There's several different kinds of it. Someone who is not aware at all will cover that up and maybe even go into the God realm and have what I've heard called recently a selfish joy. Pretty good description of someone who is, you know, has really good karma. You know, they have lots of money. Their children are beautiful. They have 2 Harleys and a Mercedes, you know, and they work for a bank, you know, and temporarily they got it made. Temporarily, everything is temporary. Yes.
What about the role of description when one is present with others?
What's your question?
Like, well, I'm kind of riffing off of what she's saying, and my tendency might be to say, "Gee, you threw a chair," and see what the response would be. Just describing.
What's your question? You said, what about the role of it? And you're drawing me into something. I'm not going to have a conversation up here unless it's on my terms.
Right.
Don't say right.
What?
You see what I say when I say don't say we're right?
Yes.
When you have a what I call a phrase filler or a knee-jerk response that goes from the thought process, from the hearing into a word that you're not aware of, you're just saying right. A lot of people do that. It's called ignorance. Now you can talk.
What's the role of description?
I think it's valuable for you, but not for them.
Right. Sorry.
And the other thing is don't apologize. You haven't offended me at all. I really like you. So, yes, Lita.
So if you're halfway up the mountain and a great deal and more, I won't say you, for me, more and more suffering of the world, of people around me, it just comes in at me. And so what I radiate is suffering, it feels like. So I guess I don't know what I'm asking exactly.
I do.
Okay,
No, you
Please tell me
have
what.
to go ahead. and do
my
it.
question is, please tell me what I'm asking.
You're asking what to do about that. If you're not, then go
Yes.
on. That was wrong.
Yes,
So you're saying that the suffering that you see in the world causes you to radiate more suffering.
it seems that way.
So
So,
that's a pretty good comment on it. Seems like that.
right, it seems that way.
Don't say right.
Sorry.
So, but what I'm saying there is I'm not particularly clear, about the way in which that's functioning. We don't have to go into personal things like this, but I would say that it's very unlikely that you're radiating suffering. You're probably radiating compassion or caring for things. It's just, it doesn't feel good to be compassionate. People think it does. Oh, I'm so compassionate. Rare to meet someone who is truly compassionate, because true compassion is practically invisible. And I mean with an emphasis on the practicality. Go ahead.
So if this is the case, then how does a person not get bogged down with the pain of compassion?
Get bogged down. Why do you want to not get bogged down?
Say that again.
Go ahead and get bogged down. So, but to try to resist anything that's coming at you or anything that's happening with you, to resist it is to actually perpetuate it on some level. So just be genuine. If you're getting bogged down, be bogged down. It's like in my situation, if I get angry about something, I'm going to get angry. I no longer am concerned about not being angry, about being some special way that, lives up to some kind of ideal of peace or something. This is not a peaceful world we're in. And to start to radiate peace is can be very irritating to those who are completely trapped by suffering. It's very irritating to be around someone that says, well, just be peaceful, just relax, and just let it all go. You want to whack them one. At least I do. Of course, people rarely say that to me anymore, because I'm usually sitting in a chair like this, holding forth. Go ahead.
Only one question, I think.
Certainly.
How do we sit with bogged downedness?
Bogged down in this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Bogged down in this.
Something director.
Yeah, Bogdanovich.
Peter
Bogdanovich. Yeah, but it's Bogdanovich. Bogdanovich. Yeah, Sanskrit word, right?
Yes.
So the way you sit with that is like this. You hold still, hold your hands in the cosmic mudra, cross your legs if you can do that, which I can't. Sit on the floor, you want to sit, and then look at it. And when that feeling comes up, just look at the texture of it. Don't add comments to it, like I should get rid of it, or here it is again, or here I go again. No comment. Make no comment. Make no comment. And that's very difficult to do, but that is the practice of awareness. And it takes a long time to do this. You can't just do, a little bit of mindfulness practice, which you've been sitting for, 20 some years. And so I'm saying, don't stop. Keep going. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. It feels like, there are times when my thoughts are, oh, why in the world am I doing this?
Yeah, this is
Why
awareness.
have I gotten so open?
This is awareness. What you just said was you're just describing what you're aware of. So it's still awareness. There's not right and wrong is real easy to go there, but it's not, that doesn't work. Everything is transcendent. That's what's called non-duality. Right and wrong are not separate from each other. Right gets its meaning from wrong. They're not separate. Jill.
Thank you for your question. Is there support? Is there a support that we bring in to working with negativity that we can lean on when there's disappointment? There's that raw.
So the rawness, the support is the very inspiration you have to see the truth. It's a if you put it into words, you say, I am going to see this no matter what. I'm going to do this. I don't care if it takes me down. I'm going to see the truth. I'm no longer going to resort to any, in other words, like I was saying to Sokuzan, which I've said to many people, don't settle. Don't settle. But this doesn't mean that the awareness itself can't be a support. And also the inspiration of the teacher, of the Sangha, of the teaching itself. Everything is dependent on, look what the Buddha gave us. Everything is dependent on everything else for its apparent individuality or ego. No self, no other. It's interesting that if you begin to see that your ego, everything is self-liberated. Everything is everything. It doesn't matter if there's an ego here or not. You're not concerned with enlightenment or not. You understand, your understanding is so clear that you, all of the ideas and terms and everything are, take on a relative kind of context. And you live with them. You still eat vegetables. I mean, you still do stuff. You're still here. You still get angry. You still get happy. Probably not quite as much, maybe. But the emotion that you're feeling that we've talked about before that, where you go down into that, I would just say, just stay there. Do it for all beings. Dedicate yourself to all. Say, I'm going to, say it this way, say, I'm going to experience this negativity, and everyone else in the universe is experiencing this negativity. I'll take theirs, I'll do it for them.
So the why
Yes.
is the support, along with what else you mentioned, the why.
Include.
Oh.
Include everyone. Starting with your family, with your friends, with Sangha, include everyone in that. It's like it's a willingness for it to never go away. Just you're not concerned. It's like I think Byron Katie, for those of you familiar with Byron Katie, she basically says, you're making an assertion that I'm good if this goes on forever.
So it's sort of like a love that you feel
It is.
that helps you carry the burden of
It is.
seeing the truth, which is ultimately
That would be a way of saying it.
disappointment.
It is love. A really high form, not a love with no grasping, just complete. It's more like a love of a mother for a child. Would be the traditional way of saying it, or a father. Yes.
My question is about there's a concept in psychology called having boundaries, having intact boundaries, setting
Yeah.
boundaries. In this practice, but I interpret that as a way to protect oneself from
Yeah.
negativity. In this practice, does that idea, is there a way to use that idea effectively or skillfully, or is that something to let go, or does it need to be turned on its ear?
Those are the only options I have.
No. I would like to hear what you have to say about setting.
I don't know. I'm reviewing all of those. Turn on ear. That doesn't sound too bad. So I think I'm following what you're saying. It's the idea of boundaries. And that's something that could be looked at. Each individual, each person could look at boundaries through their own sitting practice. We need some boundaries, natural boundaries. For instance, we need the boundary of a room to meditate in. We need the boundary in time of a time to meditate. I'm going to meditate from here to here. So we have some kind of structure that we're relating to. But I'm thinking that you're talking about boundaries that are protecting you from other people or other situations and so on. I think it's pretty personal. And I would say, when I say trust yourself, I'm not saying believe your thought patterns, because quite often that leads to paranoia. And then you get, instead of getting, a little bit of a line here, a boundary, instead you get a brick wall or something made of solid steel. And then we're right back into protecting the self-centeredness, which goes on and on and on, lifetime after lifetime. more specific, I can do that.
It seems like with awareness practice,
Yes.
to be aware of what's happening around and it seems to make things more permeable or accessible.
Okay.
So when there is negativity, I would say so with a kid, with a patient
Mhm.
that is expressing all kinds of pain and suffering,
Yes.
and it's coming into the room and at me. Is there how would I use boundary setting in that situation? Is that a useful tool? And how would that look in the context of the direction I'm wanting to go, which is to have a great
Yeah.
relationship?
So, the way I would talk about that would be to stay, to come into the room, use the example of a room, and then there's someone in the room who is suffering. Okay. Then I would, I'm not sure what the exact situation would be, but less is better in that situation. Hold your seat. In other words, stand there, be present. Do it with your awareness rather than with your concepts. Most people are so worried about their awareness because there's no stability there. And of course, the reason there's no stability is nothing is separate. But if you begin to see that, then your own identity starts to not be separate from anything you see. And there's no longer any fear of anything, complete fearlessness, because nothing is threatened. You can't threaten everything because there's nothing to threaten everything. It's everything. And you're actually, it's amazing that the very feeling of not being separate from anything feels incredibly self-centered because you are an authentic sovereign being. And you can stand your ground. You can, just like I was saying to Christy, just, you're there, you're the teacher, they're out there, function, just be there, just radiate. You can do that also. But if you're speaking about a specific kind of boundary, I'm not sure, how should you be more, come toward them more? Should you stay back? Is that what you're doing?
What I heard when you said that is to be able to be in the room
Yes.
and be compassionate and
Yeah.
be and hold my seat in my own identity, which
Okay.
then would allow me not to be not to wear what they're shooting out.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is similar to what setting a boundary would do, allow you not to wear what is being shot out at you. So I think that is the answer to my question, and that was what I was meaning when I said turn it on its ear, because my sense was that there was a way of thinking about, a way of experiencing that.
Give me a direct question.
Girl comes into the office having, she lives out of her car. Her friends are calling her names or excluding her from their group.
Okay.
And she's having headaches and abdominal pain and
Yes.
can you fix me?
Okay, then what's your question?
Do I need to be, so my question kind of was, do I need to set a boundary to protect myself from all that negativity? Or is there another way to be present with her that's more effective, more skillful, more Buddha nature, more on the path that I'm?
Don't do anything. Don't leave. Don't leave the room. You're there. She's going through what she's going through. Listen to her. No advice. No advice. It's just very disrespectful to go into someone's complicated milieu of causeless conditions, pushing, pulling, and all the history that she probably has, that she's carrying into the room. Just stand there and look at her and just be present. She probably is not used to that. She's used to having people bark at her, give her advice, or join her in the situation. Don't do anything with it. and watch how you feel about it, and don't necessarily do too much analyzing of your own feelings. And it's a practice. I mean, it's not if you begin doing that, it's not something that's going to happen in 3 days' time. And in order to do that fundamentally, probably going to have to do a lot of sitting practice. Have to sharpen that blade so that when you come when you bring the blade back into the vegetables, you're going to be able to cut. But if you're just constantly cutting vegetables your whole life and you never sharpen, it's like trying to, cut everything with a butter knife. Yes.
I find that question very interesting, because we do hear a lot about boundaries, and when I think about that, it immediately says to me separateness. And we've been talking about how nothing is separate. And so I believe that what I'm hearing from you is that we can have or set, quote unquote, a boundary by just being present, being consciously, intentionally present is a boundary.
Maybe. So when I use this image quite often, when I say not separate, I'm saying the fundamental nature is not separate, but this surface situation we're in, things are separated. People are different parts of the room. People have come and go. I use the example of a hand is one thing. It's not separate, but it's separated into fingers. But you can't take this finger in the other room and still have complete hand. But just an image. So I'm saying you can't take anything, can't take the murder out of the equation. Murder victim is a very good example of non-duality. So we can talk about that more if you like. How you doing, David?
Ben.
Or Ben?
Yes.
Gitlin?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm doing great.
I get people mixed up I've never seen face to face.
But I look different every time.
Yeah. I don't know. I noticed this. Those
I don't
things.
think I had this last time.
Oh, okay.
My head dressing.
Oh, okay.
I'm great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
Yeah.
Visiting from California.
Yep. Good.
In the area. Was hoping to drop in and just relax for a little while.
That's what we're doing.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
I mentioned in an interview about doing Tong Len with
Yes.
a child, and you said don't do that.
Yeah.
Even though I could see that it alleviated their suffering. So to me, that just feels self-centered because doing Tong Len alleviated this suffering, but it caused me suffering, which seems to be the purpose. So I don't want to ask why, but can you tell me again why?
Why what?
Why I shouldn't do Tong Len? Why I shouldn't
That's
breathe in suffering and breathe out?
That's for you personally. You need to deal with your own aggression first. Yeah, that's what you need to do. I'm not saying you shouldn't take care of the child and so on and work with him in some kind of way, but trying to pull that out of him. I think it's first work with your own aggression rather than take on other people's aggression. I mean, I know this is taught if you read Kama Chodron or the Bodhisattva Path, Tong Len practice. I've been doing this for a long time. I did and taught Tong Len for several decades. I don't teach it anymore. And that's because I don't teach it because of the way I see the way it works. I'm not saying it's wrong, some people, but it being taught as a blanket way of working with things is, well, I don't want to get off in that direction, but there's a whole lot of things that people don't understand, including people who are apparently enlightened. I'm not here to take issue with anyone. I'm just saying, you and I, we're talking and saying, don't do something. Maybe later.
Yay.
Yes, go ahead.
You had mentioned blame, pulling it back by
Yes.
its tail.
Yeah.
Or in my case, eating popsicles.
Yeah.
By not doing it or pulling it back by its tail, how is that different than making more with it?
Well, we're trying to find some way of working with it other than just letting it run rampant. So, maybe you can't do that. Maybe you can't. But if you're doing a lot of sitting practice, you're going to see the blame go out towards something else or someone. So you're having difficulty. It'll either go to a story, passion, or it may go to an explanation, or it may go to accusing, aggression, may go to, if it weren't for them, the way I was treated here, or if this hadn't happened, or, constantly looking for some kind of construct that will explain it without even looking at the ego that is making the statement, or the illusory self-nature, the concoction we call ego. And so there's a possibility of pulling some of that back. What you're doing, you're not really pulling anything back. You're just taking the energy, the fuel line that runs to the brain that you may have already put out there. You're just kind of cutting the fuel line. So, and let it die out. You may not be able to pull it back. More?
Well, you use, big surprise, you say contradictory things, but you also say don't push, don't pull, and don't ignore.
Yeah.
See what arises, but when you're pulling back blame or you're not eating popsicles, it seems like it's another form of ignorance, because now you're not seeing how this is arising and manifesting in front of you. So,
What's your question?
Yep. How is pulling it back different than meddling?
It is meddling.
Can you tell me not to do that?
Yeah, I did. Don't meddle.
So how do I meddle without meddling?
I don't know. When I say don't meddle, I'm saying don't go in and interfere with something you don't understand. Don't artificially stop something based on your preconceptions about how something works. Because quite often what you're doing there is you're trying to get a credential for ego. I'm the person who no longer, I'm the person who's compassionate. I'm the person who's blah, blah, blah. It's happening all the time. It's something much more subtle than the way I'm, my sarcasm. So hold back, and just watch what happens. And if you do see blaming go out, see if you can find, what you call it, the tail. See if you can find the fuel line that is fueling that kind of aggression. You may not be able to. It may take a lot of awareness before you can really start to tone that down. It may take a while, and everyone is so different. We can't give blanket instruction. So this is why I say, don't do much. Observe. Don't jump to conclusions. If you're jumping to conclusions, at least be aware that that's what you're doing. Everyone in here, some people I just met, and the people that I've known for quite a while, everyone is so amazingly different in their way of being confused or creating or adding to their own suffering. That's quite often what I see, is someone has a lot of clarity, maybe not incredible intelligence, but if I talk to someone for a few minutes, I can see the way they're spinning. And I may or may not have permission to comment on it. I may watch them spin, and they'll never actually ask me a question about that dynamic. So I just have to wait, because I'm not a psychiatrist. Yes. One more question, then
Yes,
I'm going to see if there's any other questions.
Well, I lost it anyway. It's fine.
Well, we'll talk later. Questions, please, since that's what we're doing.
We'll have another chance this afternoon to ask.
Okay, should we,
questions, too. Well, depends on how much we want to say.
I don't care.
There's questions.
Any other questions? Yes.
Why is
Ben.
it so hard to find a question?
Because you think you know everything.
That's ego.
Yeah, but it's not really an accusation. It's just a description. When I say that, I don't mean that, because a lot of people who are real know-it-alls who never even show up here, they're not interested in this kind of interaction, because they are so stuck on it that their opinions, their ideas won't even allow them to come into this kind of a room and this kind of a meeting when there's millions and millions of people that, never going to come here. You're here. So therefore, I have enough respect for you, and you have enough respect for me in this entire situation, that I can give you that kind of a comment, and then you'll actually look at that and say, it's not an accusation. It's just a description of. There isn't a person in here that I couldn't say that. You think you know what's happening with you, and there's some softness and some kind of giving this old man the benefit of the doubt. Here's somebody who has been doing this for a long time with great intensity, and sincerity. And so you may think, someone may think, well, come here and say, I don't have a question. You actually do. You have questions. What is it?
My question right now is the zazen or chicken taza.
Yeah.
Does that mess with your memory at all?
Well, it could. Shikantaza, the zazen shikantaza, just basically, just precisely, just sitting still and just watching what moves. It's the way I teach it. And I taught shamatha, vipassana, shinan, lakton, mindfulness awareness practice for decades. That's what I was taught back in the 70s. So I taught that for a long time. But in the last 10, 15 years, I've stopped teaching that because it creates a strong meditator. And people tend to, ego-wise, tend to lock down on their ability to meditate. So they become very good at it. They can come and sit and just meditate and follow the breath and, you know, and just stabilize. And the problem is the second part of it, called vipassana or lakton in Tibetan, the panoramic awareness doesn't spring forth. And so I start out with panoramic awareness. Sit down, hold still, watch what moves. And then if you need to do some stabilization, it'll be in terms of your own personal dynamic, your way of working with passion, aggression, and ignorance, your way of working with the 8 consciousnesses. Your personal karma will be respected so that you can actually sit and might find yourself following the breath for an hour. The next time you sit, you might just listen to the cardinals in the trees. The next time you sit, you might just hear the washing machine run or hear somebody in the kitchen milling around. You're holding very still, you're watching, and then maybe your leg aches, and all the different things. This is more like the actual world rather than just following the breath. So shikantaza is just sitting down, holding very still, and just not separating yourself from anything, the most intense negativity. And so, you know, I can't really comment on memory. I think with me, I seem to remember what I need to remember and forget a lot of things I probably need to remember. But that's because I'm old. Go ahead.
It kind of brings you into the moment, but then when you get off the cushion and you go into the world, you're more in the moment. And I think that memory is kind of like, oh, I'm writing this down. Like you're kind of writing everything down as you go rather than just experiencing it.
What's your question?
Circling back to, is that awareness
Don't worry.
in the moment?
Don't worry about it. If you're talking to me, which you are, we're talking back and forth, I'm telling you, I'm saying to you, I'm responding to you. Don't worry about it. What you should worry about, when I say it, in other words, worry, I'm saying put concentration on is sit a lot. Sit a lot. Find a space, sit down, face the wall, hit the bell, stay there. Stay there and do block sitting. You know, sit for 4-hour periods once every couple of weeks. If you can't find a group retreat practice, then do it on your own.
I live a couple blocks away from the Los Angeles Zen Center, and I can't bring myself to go there for some reason. I went a few times, and for some reason, the community is kind of scares me off a little bit.
Community is very interesting because the community will be dependent on the teacher. Okay, the people who are magnetized by a particular way of teaching will seem to have a strong similarity, or else they'll be very, very diverse. Like both of my teachers had very diverse, Trungpa Rinpoche and Kōen Chino Roshi, their communities. They magnetize people in different ways. So yeah, a lot of times people are just too zen-y. You know, you come in and you have to do this, and you have to do that, and you can't say anything.
I think you hit with a stick on the back.
Yeah, the Kyosaku.
Whoa, what's that?
Yeah.
I'm a beginner. I mean,
Did they hit you without asking you?
actually, no, I give him permission.
Yeah, usually you go like this and then you turn your head. Wham, wham, wham. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody that wants to get hit, let me know.
Easy. What's the
Huh?
stick look like?
Huh?
Where's the stick?
I have it back at the temple.
It's a good way to get awakened at 5 in the morning.
Yeah, it
You're
is.
kind of dozing on the cushion.
You know, years ago, I went to a retreat run by a monk in Detroit, where he was a combination of Korean and he was also studying under Joshu Sasaki Roshi, and that was a Rinzai. So they're very much about hitting you with a paddle on the back. Huh?
If you fall asleep.
No, he would come around and would get permission. He would come down, and if you held your hands and gasho, then he would and bowed. If you didn't, if you just sat there, then he would go by.
So the purpose Is that the hitting is?
Well, they would say it's just to wake you up, keep you more, if you're sleepy. Yeah, bang, 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 bang. Although the one in that form was a lot more.
Like Scandinavian sauna practice.
Huh?
Like Scandinavian sauna practice. The birch.
Or what was it when they used to take the whip and walk down the street? What's it called?
Flagellation.
Yeah, flagellation. Yeah, not fun.
Flatulate.
So
I have flatulation.
Flatulation.
that's not there.
Walking down the street. Flatulation.
And we could go back and sit for the last hour and then have lunch at noon. Is
Yeah,
that
let's maybe move it up till 12:30, so we can take a little bit of a break now and maybe
okay?
like 11:15.
Okay.
So you think 10 minutes or 15 minutes? 15
No.
minutes. 15. Let's do 15 minutes. So at 5:20 after, and we'll sit
Yeah.
till 12:30 and then have lunch. So when we have lunch, we convert this meditation space into eating space, so we can pull the curtains back and bring the picnic table in. And
Okay.
people can help set up with that.
So any last questions? So if you have a question that you're going to ask before we break. Yes.
And just a comment, I think sometimes it feels like there's questions that you want to ask, and if you write them down, then maybe, when we talk to you again, sometimes if I think of a question, then I forget it, and then there's no
Yeah.
question to talk.
I just wanted to pick on Ben a little bit.
If
But that's
anybody
true. Yeah, you
needs paper
can
and
write
pencils.
down. But it's very common for, Chazon, who's a monk at the temple, is the Eno at the temple. He has that difficulty. And even in interviews, he goes, I just don't have a question. And one of the things I say to him, especially for him being a monk, then I say, ask on behalf of others. All right, listen to what's being said and listen to what's happening and see from whatever the teacher, in this case me, whatever I'm saying, see how you could ask a question that would bring out, based on your understanding of what's being said, might take us all deeper into some particular aspect that I might be missing or I might be skating over or something that would help people. So you can always ask on behalf of others. It's traditional, actually, yes.
And then one more thing with the interviews, that people have signed up for interviews, we're giving preference to people who didn't go yesterday. So there's a list on the table at the bottom of the stairs. And then I don't know the best way to work it today. Yesterday we were ringing a bell. Maybe just a knock would be less disruptive.
Whatever you want to do.
We'll knock one that's 5 minutes.
So
before we get
it's a
last
half-hour interview.
That's what we're doing,
And,
so we can try to get
Yeah, that way we
everybody in.
can get everybody in.
And you'll let us know. when
Yeah,
it's
so we'll
our turn.
start sitting. If you're on the list, maybe we'll sit for 10 minutes, give you a chance to
And somebody will
break. and come back.
bring people in and
Yeah.
knock on the
Do you
door.
want to be timekeeper, since I know the people here and I can kind of work the interviews? So, we'll start us off when we sit,
Okay.
and then 1 bell to start and 2 for lunch, 12:30.
Okay, very good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You want to bring the relaxes?